the stories in the book of Genesis that we're studying together these last couple of times were primarily written, of course, to help the people of Israel better understand how they came to be and like what their God, Yahweh, was like, or who he was and why they could trust him. And we can still do this for us today as we read these stories. They can help us, can help shape our view of God as well. And it's so helpful. So thank you so much, Clint. Thanks for being here. Yeah. It's been a while. How have you been? Let's start with that.
I've been great.
Really?
Yeah. Just, hanging out in Brentwood. It's been fun.
Just wait till I'm done with these questions and see how you are. Just kidding. Yeah. I just thought, what are some good things to, I would love for you to clarify. There are so many parts of your message, this third message in our Genesis series that are like kind of new to me, honestly. Okay. And wow. I really, really, really liked it. You started out with the personal story about the Lorax, listening to the movie The Lorax. Yeah. I have similar examples, like Barbie, the Princess and the Pauper movie. Yeah. I've only heard it, and it's so annoying. Yeah. It is the worst. It's just absolutely terrible.
The characters looked nothing like, in my imagination, what they actually were.
So how do you hope that this analogy helps us understand the importance of experiencing God's stories in the Bible through Jesus' lens?
Yeah. Well, like I said, they add that color, I feel like. Like when I watched The Lorax for the first time, I mean, the characters were different shapes and sizes, and you wouldn't think about it when you're first seeing it, but after just hearing it and then looking at it, you're like, oh, that actually develops the character more. It clarifies the plot more. It helps like drive home some of the points. And so when we read the Old Testament, in light of what we know about God through Jesus, I feel like it kind of clarifies the meaning of the stories more. If we have tension or questions, we can go, well, how did Jesus address this, or what did he do? And that's exactly what John did in his letter, 1 John. Yes. He actually is translating the story of Cain and Abel for us in light of what he knew about his best friend, Jesus.
That was a new truth for me. I mean, or a new way of looking at it. I'd never overlaid 1 John and Genesis like that. It was really, really helpful. I think both you and I think many of us joining us today, we grew up with kind of a transactional God, a transactional understanding of God. If we do this, God's going to do that. And we do use Genesis, right, to ask what God is really like. He probably expects perfection. He requires our first and best. I like how you talked about that. He rejects anything less. If it's not your first, if it's not your best, he's going to reject it. If you choose good, you'll be lifted up. If you choose evil, sin is crouching at man. So are you saying that our image of God should be as a restorer and not as a destroyer? That's a new reality for me.
Yeah, I mean, that's the God I see when I look at Jesus.
Right, but not Genesis.
I know, but again, he goes back to overlaying what because Jesus is God in flesh, right? Jesus came to reveal God's character to us, right? So thousands of years of this misunderstanding or this tension, maybe through the Old Testament. Now, I still believe there are many characters within the Old Testament that got this right, even before Christ, and that were able to see clearly God's heart. But when Jesus comes on the scene, man, he just magnifies it. He goes, that is not who God is. This is who God is. I'm a restorer. I'm not going to burn down creation. I'm not going to, throw it all away. I'm here to restore it. And he starts that process on his initial coming in the New Testament. And then he's still working that restoration out through us, which is why we're still broken and still feel like we're in the storms a lot of times.
Yeah. But what a hopeful message, though, Clint. You, again, you emphasize reading Old Testament stories like Cain and Abel through the lens of what we know about God through Christ. You just mentioned that. I love that you got us to who are we tempted to hate? Because and by the way, your house must be just a hotbed of love and understanding, since Diane just taught about how to love our enemies. Oh, yeah. And now you're teaching about this. And so you guys, this must be so nice in your house.
Yeah. It's one thing to preach it. It's another thing to live it out. So we're all a work in progress.
But how do you live this out? To ask yourself, who am I tempted to hate?
Yeah, I mean, I think like I said, there's groups that come to mind. We can get so caught up in our opinion And what happens is we think we're right, or like I said, righteous, and then the other group is wrong, and we kind of misunderstand their motives, and all of a sudden that develops this sort of competition or this hatred, and then all of a sudden they do something that offends us, and next thing you know, there's a superiority sort of complex that we feel towards them. Or it doesn't have to be a group. It could be someone that's hurt us, someone that we're jealous of, someone that's abandoned us, like like I said, a bad boss, or even a parent that messed up, or something, and we develop this bitterness, this hatred. And I do want to clarify though, anger is not the sin. Jealousy is not the sin. It's when those things fester and lead towards a poisoned heart full of hatred. I mean, that's when we're crossing that line, because that's when violence and things like that follow. Anger is just an emotion, but we do have to do something with that emotion. It's either going to be stuffed down or it's going to come out. And so we have to deal with those emotions when they come up, because those are real.
I love that. Yeah, I feel tempted to hate those who dehumanize and feel totally justified. If you're going to be like that, if you're going to dehumanize image bearers of God, I'm going to hate you. Well, that's not. I think it's so good, and I love that you talked about the restoration of all things, and I think that's what the restoration that I'm going to need in my heart. It's going to be that what I need to see in me, and not to ask, who am I tempted to hate? Who am I? Yeah. Where is restoration not reaching me, and where am I okay just leaving that? So remember, God's heart is not destruction. It is restoration. And I'm going to finish with what you finished with in 1 Peter 5:10. And the God of all grace, are you listening? And the God of all grace, who called you to his eternal glory in Christ after you've suffered a little while, will himself restore you and your circumstances, the things around you, inside and outside, and make you strong, firm, and steadfast. Thanks so much for being here. I'll see you next time.